Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. My name is Phil Taylor with Bayer Crop Science, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our November edition of our Grants4Ag seminar series, where we take our Grants4Ag awardees from the last year and give them a chance to talk about the exciting work they're doing that has the opportunity to improve and change agriculture and support our operations here at Bayer and allow us to partner with these great scientists, around the globe. For those of you who haven't heard about it before, our Grants4Ag program is our signature open innovation opportunity where we provide small grants to innovators, both academic and startups around the world, to help them take that first step, that first proof of concept, or that first major sort of milestone to think about whether their innovation or their opportunity has the opportunity to impact agriculture and to help create partnerships for us, at Bayer. We just actually in the last few days have finished the work to identify our awardees for next year, for 2022. So there'll be some news coming on that in the next couple of weeks here. But we're really excited to take the new cohort, there's 22 awardees in the new cohort, and bring them together with our 24 awardees from this year's cohort, and really start to build our own little ecosystem of innovators and innovations that are really global and really dynamic and diverse in their technologies and their opportunities. So these seminars really are an opportunity for our awardees to tell you and tell us kind of what they're working on, what they're excited about. And it's my great pleasure today to introduce Dr. Sivam Krish, who's going to talk to us about his very, very, very exciting technology that really, from an AI and an optics and an image processing perspective, has the opportunity to really change how we think about detection and change how we think about learning about problems in the field almost before we know they're there. And what I'm really excited about, what we've been doing with Sivam over the last few months is just the diversity and the number of different ways where this technology has the potential for impact across different indications, across different crops, across different regions and geographies. There's really nothing we've talked about with him that hasn't been led to us thinking, oh, we could use it for this, or we could use it for that. But more importantly, how the technology that I'm sure he'll explain to you really has the opportunity to be used at a very small scale with smallholder farmers in different countries around the world, all the way up to very large scale. And so I'm delighted he's with us today, and very much looking forward to his remarks, and would definitely encourage you, please think of your questions, think of your comments, put them in the chat as we go through the conversation. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. But with that, all that remains for me to do is to say thank you for coming, and thank you, Sivam, for joining us. And let me turn the floor over to you.
Hi, Phil. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm based in Adelaide, Australia, and I'd like to share today the exciting work we are doing with AI and microscopy.
Did we lose you, Sivam?
I'm still here, so everything's going. I think.
Yep, I can see you and a couple others. But he sort of disappeared off camera as his screen went to share. It's obviously causing a bit of a hiccup. So sorry for the delay here. Hey.
Hi.
There you are. Excellent.
Good. Can you see my screen?
I can. You want to go ahead and put it in presentation mode, and then I'll leave you to it.
All right, everybody. So I'd like to share with you all some thoughts about AI and microscopy. We call it the third eye because I think we are going to be able to see things that we have not seen before with AI. So this, I believe, is going to change agriculture in a very interesting and powerful way. So I guess some of you all may have seen this graph about exponential growth of computing. So computers are getting more and more powerful and are poised to surpass the human brain at some point. And the further you go along this curve, the closer the distance between the human brain and the mouse and other insects. So we are definitely on this exponential curve. Now, the question for us is, in terms of visual assessment, where are we? Are we close to, is AI better than us? Is it worse than us? Where are we in this curve? I believe that AI has surpassed the human ability in terms of visual assessment. Here are some examples of what we are doing. So we are able to assess a wide variety of things with just phone AI. So this is tea. Now, to train a tea taster, it takes 10 years, and it is very difficult to assess. We are now able to assess tea accurately. We can assess grain variety. Grain variety is something you cannot assess by eye. We can do it fairly accurately. This is an interesting example with fish spoilage. By looking at the eye or the gill, you can assess when the fish was caught. So in the context of very high spoilage, like 20–30%, this becomes a really powerful technology. Now, this is what we have achieved. The point about today's discussion is to discuss what happens when we pass this point. I believe we have passed this point, but if you're not sure, you can contact me and you can try it out, because you got to see it to believe it. But let's move on and see what happens when we pass this point where anybody with a phone and an AI app can outperform a human expert. So I like to discuss what's going to happen in agriculture in terms of food loss, and what's going to happen to the food industry in terms of food waste, and how this is going to create equity, and what's going to happen to the food chain, and what the future holds for this technology. So food loss, as you know, is a major issue that happens before the food is in the field, before it's harvested. So primarily due to insect pests and leaf diseases. I think they consume about 30% of the global production. So here we are using Go Micro to assess one of the most devastating pests in agriculture, the fall armyworm. So with a magnifier, you can actually see things early, and you can detect them very, very accurately. And this was made possible by the Bayer grant, which allowed us to send microscopes to many parts of the world to test it out and validate this. The tests in Kenya were supported by UPA. So the reason why we are able to do this is because we get very, very high accuracy with a very small number of images. And the reason why we get this accuracy is because we provide clean images for both training and also for assessing. So typically, you need a couple of thousand images to get up to about 70%. With just 50 images, we exceed the best AI apps that is at around 80%. And with more images, we get to about 96%, as we did in the fall armyworm. So we have an imaging technology that is able to train with a small number of images. And also because you're using images of the same conditions, we are able to achieve very high accuracy. So the damage caused by pests is very high. It's estimated in Africa alone to be $3.6 trillion a year. So this technology will make it possible for all farmers all over the world to assess pests accurately. So when you detect pests and plant disease early, you can use less pesticides and less insecticides, herbicides. If you increase the quality of your produce, you can increase the wages of farmers, earnings of farmers. So this technology will help subsistence farmers reduce their input cost and earn more through improving the quality of what they produce. So this is the project that we did. So this project allowed us to validate the field accuracies. So typically, I'm sure you'll have read a lot of AI research papers claiming 99% accuracy. These are very often training accuracies in the machine. Most of these accuracies come crashing down when you actually deploy it on a phone due to variations in lighting and phone conditions. So the problem we've cracked is that we've actually achieved extremely high field accuracies. That's one part of the story. The other thing that we have achieved is that we did this with the Bayer grant. This is a relatively small grant, not the typical $100,000 to $200,000 you need to build, test, and deploy AI apps. We essentially crowdsourced this. We worked with scientists that we've shown you, and they built the apps. They also validated. So we could respond rapidly to any invasive pests that have not been seen before. As long as you have people willing to work with you at a very low cost, you can actually develop and deploy solutions at an amazing speed in the order of weeks. Now, you probably have a sense of how much of money is spent on biosecurity. I would say how much of money is wasted on biosecurity because the problem is solved. Any kid can analyze and do the job of a biosecurity official without a problem. So I hope that this approach will help prevent or arrest future epidemics where you can deploy these devices, build engines, test it, and validate it, and put the capacity to detect in the hands of hundreds or thousands or millions of farmers. So the interesting thing here is that not only were we able to detect, we were able to detect the stage of the larvae. So we could detect L1 and L2 because UPL was promoting a biopesticide that had to be used at L1 or L2. So these are stages that you can't see or detect by eye, and the smaller they are, the more difficult they are to differentiate. And we can do this with a device that will cost about $1 when it's mass manufactured. So I believe we have the capacity to give every farmer in the world the capacity to assess to an accuracy that matches or exceeds that of the best agronomist. Now that is only detection. Obviously, when you detect, there are other things that you got to do, and I'm sure agronomists are the best people to advise farmers on that. So the other topic I want to touch upon is food waste, which I believe can be reduced with this technology. So as you know, 1/3 of the food that we produce is wasted. And one of the reasons for this wastage is the inability to accurately define what an acceptable standard is. Standards are subjective. People have different sense of what is acceptable and what is not. And this contributes very significantly to the global waste of food. Now, there's a reason for this, and that's because engineers came up with this idea. So the first attempt to standardize came in the manufacture of flintlock rifles, because when one rifle broke, you got to fit another part in it. And if all the parts were different, as they were in early days, you could not interchange them. So this whole idea of interchangeability drove standardization. But then we use exactly the same methods of assessing standard products to fruits and vegetables and biologically created products. Now, everything is natural is meant to be different. It's not meant to be identical. It's variable, it's perishable, it's complex, and throughout the food chain, it changes in nature, character, and color. So we are doing something that is completely inappropriate, using very simplistic, crude engineering standards on stuff that is incredibly complex. So I think there are ways to change this by using AI. So what AI can do is remove subjectivity and make assessment more objective and accurate. And this will have a significant effect, I believe, in the food chain. So we have developed technologies that can now look at different scales. We can look at nuts, we can look at fruits, we can look at tomatoes, and we have a range of devices that benefit from this kind of imaging condition, going from 8 mm and now reaching up to 650 by 650. So we have built a technology to empower your phone. The investment in the phone has already been made. The camera there is absolutely awesome. It can outperform industrial machines now. So everybody now has the fundamental capability to assess food quality better than any old world pre-industrial or industrial method. So what this is going to do is reduce conflicts, reduce damage, reduce waste, and increase satisfaction from consumers and throughout the entire chain. The other thing that I think phone microscopy will do is bring about some level of equity, because most farmers have a phone, and this releases the capacity, our technology releases the capacity of the phone to be really powerful instruments. So as you know, this is the world's largest protest, farm protests happening in India, where farmers are very unhappy with the pricing of the buyers, which are, as you know, subjective. And very often the farmers feel cheated or they feel it's unfair. Now, what if every farmer can QC what they produce? We can do that now with a device that might cost around $3. Now, this was taken with the phone, QC'd with the app, and there's 1,770 grains. The best industrial scanner is about $15,000 and scan about 200 grains, all of which has to be separated and aligned. So here we have the capacity to put the power of QC in the hands of every farmer. So you can see NNN is for normal grains, and this is for weevil attacked grains with insect holes, and then you have broken grain. Now the interesting thing here is the weevil attack grains, some of them have holes so you can identify, but some of them don't, because if the hole is on the other side, the insect has eaten it up, but it's lighter. AI can even detect stuff that is lighter. It doesn't really have to see a hole to decide whether it's insect bit or not. So this is our very first attempt at this in this kind of size. We've just got started. So this means we are going to be able to put incredibly accurate assessment in the hands of all farmers. So this is what the device looks like. And this can do multi-produce. It doesn't have to be grain. Now, this opens up another possibility. The buyer can now create a standard. All the buyer needs to do is throw some grain, take a photograph, and there you go. You know how many, you know the ratio of all the defects. That's how you create a standard. That's all that's needed. And once that's done, he can convey the standards to a seller, to a farmer, who can then QC to see if it matches those standards. So as you know, quality standards, I believe, should be between the buyer and the seller. Everybody in between just adds cost, delays, confuses the whole thing, and extract a commission out of it. So this will allow sellers and buyers to transact on quality standards they agree on. So the grain standards for making, chicken feed is different from the ones used for biscuits. So by giving buyers and sellers the ability to create their standards and agree on them, essentially can transform the way grain is sold and bought. Now, additionally, this can become a purchase tool because farmers can now QC according to the standards required by the buyer and with a QR code ensure that they meet it. So this technology can empower farmers to sell QC products at the right price to buyers around the world. So we have done some experiments working with CGIAR to assess whether we can do grain variety. Now, we were quite surprised that we could. These are 4 South Australian grain types. And on our very first attempt, we got 86%. We are now at 96%. So these grain types are very difficult, I think impossible to detect even by human experts, by eye. We could also do humidity. So looks like there's quite a lot of things that you can do with AI that you can't do by eye. So we're not talking about matching standards anymore. We're talking about exceeding standards and creating a flexibility and capability that is far superior to what's out there with a phone that everybody has and with devices that are few dollars. Now let's go to the food chain and see what kind of impact this technology can have on the food chain. So in our current food chain, there's a lot of data loss, and this data loss will create food loss because nobody in the chain has an accurate assessment of the thing that they are dealing with. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So there's a lot of reinsurance costs. And there's a lot of rejects. There's a lot of disagreements. There's a lot of conflicts. So if you have data continuity, which we can enable by blockchain, by allowing people to certify, you close the loop. Now, we are working with a company in Peru to assess the ripeness of pomegranates. So when the pomegranates go to Europe, the European buyers prefer very red pomegranates. So pomegranates that are not that red should not be shipped because the shipping cost is not worth it. So here the retailer can let the grower know what type of pomegranates are acceptable and also perhaps when to pick the pomegranate. So by doing quality, by the ability to assess quality throughout the chain can very, very significantly reduce the waste that we see in the chain. And the reason why we're able to do this is because everybody has a phone, and all it takes is a phone and that device to be able to QC. So we think quality should be assessed, not quality control. I think it's a terrible word and a terrible idea because it's about a gate. It's about a gate controlled by the buyer, and the buyer says, thank you very much, we are overstocked, or this is not what we want, and the rest gets dumped. Now, if we take responsibility for the food chain, we can assess food quality throughout the chain. So it ties in a circle. And the vehicle to do this, I think, is blockchain. So right now, the way quality is assessed, say for an apple, you can look at the bricks index, you can look at the hardness. There are certain graphs, right? But you can also look at shelf life. We call it a state. Now, the interesting thing with Go Micro, you can assess the state, right? In every bunch of apples, there's a commonality. So if you know the state, you can roughly guess what the rest are. You don't have to do the other mechanical and chemical tests. So our proposition is to create a predictive model, a computational model of food. So what that means is when you get apples, you know what's going to happen to it if you ripen it. You know what's going to happen to it if you freeze it. You know what's going to happen to it when you shake it around. You can build a predictive model. So when you combine the predictive model with the photographic record and details that are assessed and certified, you have something that wasn't there before. You have a traceable, quality verifiable digital asset, which you can then trade. You can trade it like what are, nuts and bolts or minerals or food produced with all this complexity can be tradable, can be made into digital assets, so they can be tradable. Now this will make a big difference to the food industry and will certainly reduce waste, because in this thing you can put in all kinds of smart contracts with blockchain. You can say it has to be in such and such a temporary range for us to give this price, or you can have markdowns. You have an intelligent way of dealing with the variability rather than a gate that is essentially used for rejection by the buyer for the reasons that they may choose. It's not fair because it's subjective, and the seller never benefits from the quality standards of the buyer. So it is fundamentally unfair. So being able to assess quality accurately will create a system of governance of the entire chain that is reasonable and fair. So
Stephen, we're not seeing your screen anymore. Do you mind sharing it again, or I apologize for interrupting you.
No problem. Thank you for letting me know. When did you lose the screen?
2 or 3 minutes ago.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes. Super, thank you.
So was I on this slide or the next slide?
You were on that slide.
Right. So yeah, so we're talking about the digital assets, and this is the chain that I was talking about, where you can assess at every point in the chain and have understanding of food quality rather than a gate. This is the state where the state changes with time, and by building a predictive model, you can predict how it behaves. And this is a blockchain arrangement that we are proposing that captures all aspects of the produce with sufficient details so that it can be traded. So you can also trade tomatoes in 5 days' time when it is going to reach a certain ripeness. You can build in smart contracts that takes care of transport conditions. So you can put intelligence into it. And this, I believe, will fundamentally change the way food produce is sold and transacted. So I'd like to kind of explore what the future will look like with this technology being developed and hitting the market. Now, as you might know, Australia is the skin cancer capital of the world. 70% of Australians over 70 years old get some kind of skin cancer issue. Now, the device that used to check this is about $50,000. This can be done with a $10 device. So this has huge applications in medicine. This is blood cells. We just changed the lens, and this is done with our phone. We did this 2 years ago, and we've not worked on it ever since. We will get back to this when we can. So it has a lot of applications in human health as well. And we're doing this for assessing, counting mosquito eggs. So there's a way of surveying mosquito eggs, and this is an easy way with a phone microscope to count them to control the mosquito larvae. So the point I want to make is that there are some big changes ahead. The microscope, which is stable in most labs, I think is now a useless piece of equipment. As you can see, it was designed for the eye, right? Then they started selling cameras for it. So nobody's using the eyepiece, right? Then, of course, it gets digital. So they sold screens for it and start using computers. But now with AI, nobody's looking at the screen either, right? So this is a waste of time and a waste of money. Now, phones are definitely can do most of this and will also outperform these devices because they can also be taken to the field. You can do what you do in a lab in a field, and that will transform the way agricultural research is conducted because you can get a rich set of data. You can get real life experiments that's done on a farm in real conditions, not in a lab condition. And it'll increase the data flow in research and under realistic conditions. And more importantly, when a diagnosis is done or developed, it can be deployed immediately because anybody with a phone can use the same device and detect the issues. So in terms of translating research into field, well, if you use a phone, you don't have to worry about that. That's guaranteed. So I think there are some big changes ahead as this technology develops. I certainly believe it'll replace the microscope, and I don't think our children will be looking at microscopes anymore, as much as they don't look at, abacus and calculators and so on. Okay, the other thing, as you may have noticed in agriculture, satellite imagery is something that everybody got very excited about. Now, of course, they're getting excited about drone imagery. The thing that is going to create more excitement is microscopy, because the level of detail and assessment that you can make is so much more valuable and so much more accurate. And that is beginning to happen. Now, the cool thing about what we are doing is not all what I've spoken about. It is a fact that children can build and test their own AI engine. These are 10-year-old kids who have just built the AI engine using our app 2 years ago. And you can see how happy they are. So this is what we will be doing, democratizing AI, making it available and exploring all the wonderful applications that you can have with it. So thank you very much. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and entertain questions. You can find out about us in our website and also follow us on LinkedIn, where we constantly update people about what we do. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Sivam. That was great. Sorry for the little technical difficulties as we ran through. Yes, would love to hear questions. It's a small group today, so Prasad, I see you have a question in the chat, but why don't you unmute and pop your camera on and ask your question.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, sir. So wanted to take your feedback on say the Indian side. There's huge amount of paddy and wheat that gets procured from multiple small scale farmers or aggregators sometimes within a very short time frame. And these guys, these small farmers. Currently, the entire mobile penetration may not be smartphone kind of a product that could, you could load this software. So, how do we get over this? Because it's a very great technology for at least the Indian procurement side. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Prasad. Very, very good question. So a few things I want to explain to you on this. So the images that you saw actually came from Punjab, and that's probably the place where we'll launch it first. Developing a technology is different from finding the best way to launch it. So this is going to be used in warehouses initially. Now, all the computation is done in the cloud. So all the phone needs to do is send a decent picture. Now, one of the things that we discovered in Sri Lanka is that the lower, this is not for grain, for insect detection, the older phones, the 6 MB phones, were outperforming the 64 MB phones. That was a bit shocking. Why are the low quality phones doing even better? And it took us a year to figure out why. In the older phones, the CCD side is bigger. So the signal to noise ratio is better in the older phones because in the new phone, they chop it up so much, there's a lot of noise. So this is designed for working with phones, and some of it is, can even work without the internet. So this is a very rugged technology. We will not be able to supply, as long as it's a smartphone, you can do a lot of things for it. Of course, there will be farmers who don't have a smartphone, and at this stage, we can't help them, but they can definitely use this at the point of procurement. So when they go to a procurement center or a mandi, I'm sure somebody there will have a decent phone through which they can use this. So the important thing to remember is the farmer anybody can do it. It'll give the same result, right? So it need not be the farmer's phone, but the farmer can see and verify, and there's no room for cheating or for disagreement. And I hope that'll be helpful.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I mean, fantastic technology, sir.
Thank you.
Other questions for Sivam from the team here?
Sivam, Al Kriz there.
Hi.
No questions, but I just want to say I'm really impressed with how diverse this technology is being used across such a wide range of products. Looking at that, so congratulations and good work on this. I'm really impressed with this. So very nice.
Thank you so much. That's one of our challenges. It can do too much. And as a startup, we have to be careful about that one.
That's always a challenge. Rahul, you have a question.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
Sorry about that. I don't know how that comes
Maybe Rahul, pop your question in the chat if we can't solve the echo. All right. You're muted, Sivam.
While Rahul is typing his questions, I would like others to think through what else this can do. Not that we will jump into it, but it'll be good to have a list.
It sounds like the last thing you need is more applications, though, right?
Absolutely. Well, the one way to solve it is just give them the microscope and the app. They go figure it out.
That's true. That's true.
In a sense, Sivam, I mean, what you just said about give them the microscope and have them figure it out. It's kind of like what Ginkgo has been doing in synthetic biology, in a sense, providing their platform out to people and basically looking for how that is going to work to best that company's effort, right? Providing that platform and bring synthetic biology to the people, kind of like what Go Micro is doing with microscopy.
Oh, you're muted again.
Yeah, that's true, because we don't really know what it can do. We never thought you can look at an eye of a fish and tell when it was caught. Who would have thought of that? CJR was doing a project that can do wheat variety. We've never done wheat variety. No expert can look at a wheat and tell what variety is. We just tried it. It worked. Moisture content. Who would think you can do moisture content? So, there's a whole lot of things to be discovered. And by just giving it out and letting people do their own thing, you create a larger and larger pool of possibilities. And of course, we need a monetization model to make it all work, but that's an independent problem. The fact is that we are democratizing this capacity and we're opening it up to discovery and multiple, very wide range of uses.
Okay, Sivam, do you see Rahul's question in the chat? You're still muted.
So sorry. So this is the friction in the Indian procurement chain. Look, we face this with fish, right? Fishermen are tough all over the world, and they like to sell what they've caught, and it's very dangerous to disrupt that, right? So we are finding this to be a problem, right? The problem is the buyers have the power. I mean, it can be supermarkets, it can be any buyer has a certain level of power. The seller has no power, right? The issue is there's no way a farmer can dispute that. I mean, this is happening right here in Australia. Even a big grower cannot dispute with the supermarket because there's no record. No, if it's wrong grade, it's wrong grade. There's no comeback, right? So what the Indian government is doing, the Indian government is taking a very important step in wanting all grain procurement to be digitized, and they're supporting that initiative, right? So I think at an organizational level, there is some pressure in that direction. In the supermarket chains in the Western world, there's also significant pressure to be socially responsible and to reduce waste. So there's a lot of, and fair trade is another pressure, right? So I think what we would like to do is to use those pressures positively. So for example, what this technology will allow to do, it will allow a European buyer, say of chocolates, to go buy something in Africa, maybe beans in Africa, sold by a farmer, right, to the QC standards that they want, cutting out all the middlemen, and allow this chocolate manufacturer to say ethically sourced, right? So there is an advantage in that. So we need to look at opportunities where this will initially succeed, build a sufficient momentum and pressure where it becomes a de facto standard. Of course, maintaining standards, right, is a very powerful position, right? And it's not going to be easy to dismantle that because that's where power is exercised. So we are disrupting this, right? So I guess the way to disrupt it is in sections. Like, for example, in brewing beer, the variety of barley is very important, right? And there are varietal issues. So we need to pick areas where, so one of the things that we identify is seafood because the wastage is 30%, right? And the cost of fish, particularly expensive fish like tuna is very, very high. So we are picking niches because we can do so much with it. We don't have to do everything. We pick a niche, we get certain players to accept the value. Now, the important thing to appreciate is that when you have a 20-30% waste, right, you reduce that, you have enough to go around. You can distribute that, right? So you can incentivize the entire chain quite nicely and run a profitable business, right? And with blockchain, for example, you're transporting fish from Hyderabad to to Delhi, right? So there's a transportation system. With blockchain, you can monitor the temperature, you can monitor the quality of the fish, and with blockchain contracts, you can incentivize the vehicle, the transportation company. If it arrives without a drop in quality, we pay you so much, right? So you can add in all kinds of interesting things into the system and have enough savings to incentivize everybody. And how we get there is what we are trying to figure out right now. It's not easy. Those problems do exist and are barriers.
Great. Thank you. Vimlesh, you have a question.
Yeah, hello. Good evening.
Hi.
Everybody.
Good evening.
Yeah, actually, I just saw this program, and I am very much impressed with these technologies like blockchain, AI, and these will have a great impact in Indian agriculture system. So I also doing some work in the agricultural field. So I just want to connect with you. So how can I connect with you?
Yeah, so best thing is you can connect me with LinkedIn, and then please send me an invite, Vimlesh. I'll be happy to connect with you, and we can discuss how we can help you and the explore projects we can do.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Mr.
Great. I would also like to be connected with you.
Oh, sure. Well, so same answer, I guess. So yeah, do connect with me or any of the other Bayer
Yeah,
team on the call here.
actually, I want to see the Indian farmers to be prosperous, and they must have good earnings also.
Yep. No.
Yeah.
Completely
Yes. So
with you.
correct. So the other thing that this quality control quality assessment can do rather than quality control is that you can feed information back, right? Say, for example, you detect a lot of holes in your wheat and you say, okay, there's been insects. So you can tell the farmer, hey, you have to look after your grain and this is what you'll gain. Right. In terms of fish, you can say, hey, if the fish is spoiled on arrival, you can tell the fisherman, look, if you invest in ice, in refrigeration, this is what we can pay you. So, make those decisions. So same thing in farming as well. You need to invest in storage. So you can, the flow of information backward to the farmer will hopefully help them improve their productivity and profitability. And I think that's another bonus point of this whole connecting the information chain. Yeah. So Rahul, answering your question about getting mandis to get better realization. Now, what's happening in India seems to be very complex and interesting and amazingly dynamic. So there's the old world systems of buying, and you have some amazing startups and companies transforming the entire ecosystem, and we are working with some of them. So I think that there are lots and lots of opportunities in India. Technology has been received really well by a lot of Indian companies, and that's where I think this is going to really take root and demonstrate the capability. So we are very excited about the levels of interest we are having from India right now.
Excellent. Great. Okay. Any last question for Sivam? It's late where he is in Australia, so we should let him go. but really appreciate the talk, Sivam. Thank you for the update and everything that's going on and the great questions. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close the call. And just to give you a heads up, we hope to have another seminar like this at the beginning of December. So keep an eye on LinkedIn for that. And please do stay connected. And as we discussed with Vimlesh, do connect on LinkedIn with me or any of the team here, and would love to talk to you some more. But thank you all.
Yeah, thank you everybody, and have a happy Diwali. Same to you.